Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Faith, Finance, and Forgiveness podcast. I'm your host, Jeneé of JeneéM.com. And hold on for me, YouTube. I realized the mic wasn't plugged in, and hence why I should not be recording this late at night. So let's try this over again. Let's try this completely over again. All right, here we go. See, and that's the beauty of catching it live. You get to see everything. So if you're considering a podcast, this is what happens. Or what can happen. But hey, guys. I was supposed to record this earlier, but I got wrapped up in mapping out some things, and so I decided, after I get home today, I'll just record it. And you know how when you start to wind down for the night and you start not feeling like doing anything, but I've committed to doing this, and I enjoy doing it. I just wish the spirit would hit me earlier in the day versus later, or like, you know how you procrastinate, you wait till the last minute, and it's like that pressure kind of forces you to show up in a way that you should have early on by being proactive. I'm still working on getting there, but at least you get to be and see this part of the process, because if anybody said it's easy, they're lying. All right, so here we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Faith, Finance, and Forgiveness podcast. I'm your host, Jeneé of JeneéM.com, entrepreneur and financial professional, and I focus on teaching first-generation grads how to manage their money so they can pay off debt, build wealth, and create a strong legacy. This podcast is sponsored by The Blueprint, a course that helps you prepare financially for home ownership. You can learn more about the course and enroll by going to bit.ly/the blueprint to buying a home. That's bit.ly/the blueprint to buying a home. Now, for this episode, I decided to go back to a list of questions that I had asked to people that are in my target market, so those who are first-generation grads. And the question that I asked was, what is your biggest frustration with managing personal finances right now? And then where are you going online to get help with those questions that you have? So I did collect feedback from several people, and I have a list in front of me that I'm looking at, and I'm going to address one of those in today's podcast. Now, if you have a question that you'd like me to answer, before the name was changed to Faith, Finance, and Forgiveness, the podcast was called Ask Jeneé, #AskJeneé. So if you have a question, you can go to bit.ly/ask-Jeneé, Jenee, and I will be happy to answer your question in a future episode. So the question or the frustration that I'm dealing with today is unexpected expenses and boundaries with family members. So how do you handle that? So if that's a frustration, the solution is, how do you handle that? How do you manage that? How do you work through something like that? So let's talk about it. When it comes to unexpected expenses, I'm someone who believes in preparing for the unexpected. You never know what might happen, and so you want to make sure that you plan for the worst case scenario, while of course hoping that it doesn't actually happen. And the way that you do that financially is I came up with something called the levels of saving. And these are the different levels that you want to have in place. And it's something that everyone should consider as part of their saving strategy. So on my website, I actually have a training about saving, exclusively about saving. So if you go to my website, jeneem.com, jeneem.com, under the training section, you'll see a training called Saving Strategically. And in it, I talk about the levels of saving. But when it comes to preparing for the unexpected, you want to make sure that you have accounts in place that will help you to be prepared for the unexpected. So what does that mean? So that means that you should, of course, have an emergency fund with 3 to 6 months of expenses, and that's mainly to protect you in the event of a job loss. But you should also consider having a life happens fund. A life happens fund. So what a life happens fund is, it's an additional account that sort of acts as that barrier and that in between you reaching into your savings account and taking money from your emergency fund. Because it's only $1,000, it should be enough to cover any unexpected expenses, but not too much money where it'll take a long time to replace it. And it doesn't pull away from your nest egg, which is your emergency fund. So I recommend that you have a life happens fund with up to $1,000 in it as your go-to account for any emergencies. And when you have a dire emergency, that's when you can graduate to go into the emergency fund. Now, when it comes to boundaries with family members, that can be tricky because everybody is different, you know, and I think it depends on the person's preference. It depends on the person's personality and how you manage that. For me personally, when it comes to my family members, they know that Jeneé is very clear on what she is and what she's not going to do. And so if you know it's something that I don't want to do, then you won't ask me. You won't bring it my way. And so when it comes to my boundaries with my family members, very seldom do I feel my boundaries be intruded upon. My family members, they respect it because they know that things are black and white with me. There's not a lot of gray. And so the beauty in that is I don't open myself up to putting myself in positions where, you know, I can get upset or frustrated, or relationships can become strained simply because I communicate up front what my attitude is, what my position is, so that way my boundaries don't get again intruded upon. So let me give you a specific example, because I believe I'm talking very general here. Because again, it's different for everyone. So a financial example, that one could be a little too close to home. So let me think of another. Okay, my dad won't mind me talking about this. So when it comes to my dad, so growing up, I was Daddy's little girl. He would give me everything I wanted, everything I needed, and then some. He spoiled me rotten. And so I talked about how my dad was an entrepreneur. He was a Mr. Softy man. So he owned 4 trucks, and me and my brothers would work on the truck to make extra money during the summers or when we had a vacation from school. And so that's what we did. That's how we earned money. And so I remember earning like $250 one summer. And then also remember my dad wanting to either borrow from the $250 that I had, or he did not, he withheld payment for a certain day that we worked because he didn't have the cash money to pay us right then and there. Well, I made sure that I stayed on top of my dad to make sure that he paid me back. And it took a while, but eventually he paid me back, and I never loaned him any money after that. My brothers, on the other hand, have loaned my dad money that till this day my dad has not paid back. Not because he doesn't want to, but because when it comes to people that my dad owes, he doesn't keep them high on the ranking list. So he basically will pay them when he can pay them. And unfortunately that hasn't been anytime soon. But when it comes to me, because he knows that I'm on top of him like a hawk. I mean, $250. I can't even remember how much he borrowed from me, or how much he needed to pay me that he didn't pay me. But I was on top of him about that. And I believe it took a while for him to pay me back, simply because I was a child. He felt like he didn't have to. But that's not how I handle things. It's like, don't look at me as a child. Look at me as a creditor. You loan money from me, so you have to pay me back. And just the different things that me and my dad went through as a result of, just life, that also played a part in his level of respect for me, because I'm just the type of person, I'm no nonsense. And if you cross me, it's pretty hard to get back in my good graces. Now, as a believer and as a Christian, I'm not really that way anymore. But at the same time, I do have the gift of goodbye and releasing people very, very quickly. So while I'm not somebody who, I don't want to say who cuts people off. Back in the day, if my dad crossed me, like I remember one time I ignored him for a whole year. I won't say I ignore things, but if you show me who you are, I will believe you. And so I do mentally take note of how to place people, how to classify different relationships, what I should and should not do based on their actions towards me. So I'll say that. And with that, with my dad, because I know he's the type of person that, quite honestly, he'll reach out when he wants something or if he needs something, but outside of that, you may not hear from him. So with that being the case, I only allow myself to, be in his path and to, communicate with him when I know that mentally and emotionally I can handle that type of interaction. Because when you have someone that is just someone who naturally pulls and pulls and pulls, if you don't have anything left, then you don't have much to pull on anyway. So when it comes to my dad, I got off on a tangent, but there were things leading up to the money that made him understand that if he was going to borrow money from me, it was different than if he was going to borrow money from my brothers. And so that's why till this day, like right now, he owes me not a dime. Every dollar that he owed me, I made sure that I collected on, and my brothers will continue to loan him money, and that he may or may not pay back. So yeah, when it comes to having boundaries, you know, our family members are who they are. We don't choose them. We just have to live with them. So if you're somebody who is struggling with setting boundaries with family members, you may not like to hear this, but that's your fault. We teach people how to treat us. And so whatever we're willing to accept once, they'll think it's okay. It's just like with children. When a child is a child, they don't understand much. But if you tell them no, and the look on your face, and babies, they're very smart. They can feel and sense when they shouldn't do something and when something is okay. That's how they learn. And adults are the same way. Children are the same way. Whatever behavior you reinforce as, you know, there not being anything wrong with it, mentally, people will think it's okay. So if you have a family member that doesn't work, doesn't do much, you know, with their life or with their time, and they always, you know, have their hand out looking for some money, and you never tell them, no, I need you to get a job and start earning your own money and don't look my way. Unless you have that conversation and be completely honest and transparent with them, they'll think it's okay to continue to hold their hand out. We have to teach people how to treat us. And if something is not okay, then we need to be the responsible party to step up and actually say something. Now, I know these can be uncomfortable conversations, and they're not always easy. They are difficult conversations, but they need to be had nonetheless. Because what you don't want to happen is they catch you on a bad day and you blow up on them, and they're left stuck trying to figure out why you have an attitude when all this time you've never said anything. You've never said a word. And that's not fair to them at that point, because by that point, you know, y'all have built this relationship and this way of dealing with each other, and nothing up until this point has been said to them, whether verbally or non-verbally, that their behavior is out of order. So in their mind, they know that they're just being their normal selves, and now all of a sudden you blowing up on me and you got an attitude. What's wrong with you? And now it's your fault. That's something you did wrong. And so when it comes to boundaries with family members, we have to teach our family members how to treat us. And again, it may not be comfortable. You may not want to do it. But you have to think about it like this. Can I continue to live with this? And if not, then I need to say something. And you can do it in love. I mean, it's not always what you say, but how you say it. And so the best time to communicate something is when you're not overly upset or have all this pent up energy and frustration, because that's just not productive. So you should definitely be having those conversations if you do feel uncomfortable, or you do have those family members that act entitled or seem entitled. Like, you need to communicate something to them that lets them know that their behavior is not okay and that they need to change it. And granted, they may not change at all, but at least they know not to hold out their hand in front of you. And if that's the case, that solves your problem. It just does. So yeah, that's my stance on that. So if you're somebody who struggles with being able to take care of unexpected expenses, or you know that's a pain point that you have, and you are frustrated with boundaries with family members, that's my personal opinion. That is my personal opinion. So if you're somebody who, you have not communicated to family members about how you really truly feel, and maybe it's been going on for a while, and now after listening to this podcast, you want to begin to make changes, you can do that. But it'll have to be more subtle changes, because otherwise you'll throw them for a loop and they'll be confused trying to figure out what's wrong with you. So you can make subtle changes, like when they ask you for something, if they're always used to you giving them, you can just be quite simple. You can just say quite simply, I don't have it to give you. And it's not a lie. It's not saying that you don't have it at all. It's saying you don't have it to give them. I mean, you can still be honest and tactful. And if they ask you why, to be quite frank, that's none of their business. Now, I can feel that it's getting to be a late hour, because I'm just tripping all over my words. So, like, when it comes to that late night recording, broadcasting, and all that stuff, I know now that it is not for me, but at least I know. So this will not be happening again. But I appreciate all of you who are tuned in, and those of you watching this on YouTube. If you do have a question that you want me to address on a future episode, you can go to bit.ly/ask-Jeneé, that's Jenee. And again, if you want to check out the blueprint, which is the course I mentioned earlier on preparing for homeownership, go to bit.ly/the blueprint to buying a home. And be sure, if you are on SoundCloud, please be sure to follow, so that way you get notifications each time a podcast is posted. If you're on YouTube, make sure you give me a thumbs up or leave a comment, and please be sure to subscribe below the video, so that way we also stay connected and you get notifications each time a video is posted. This podcast is something that I decided to do, and the vision that God gave me was that it would build up people first and finances second. I feel like a lot of times it's hard for people to do the practical stuff of managing their finances well, because they're dealing with a lot of things mentally, emotionally, physically. And so once you're able to cut through those layers and get through that stuff, then budgeting becomes easy, savings becomes easy. But you can't expect someone to steward their finances well if they don't see themselves the right way, or their money the right way, or even their situation the right way. So we have to tackle people's perspective, and we have to basically grow people mentally to a higher level. And when they think higher and more about themselves, when they think on a higher level and think more of themselves, then their finances and how they behave will begin to align with what they think about themselves. There is a direct correlation between how someone thinks and how they spend their money. But that's another show for another day. So thank you all for tuning in. And last but not least, please connect with me over on my website, jeneem.com. That's JENEEM.com. It's linked down in the info section on YouTube, and it's also in my profile on SoundCloud. Would love to stay connected to you and also share with you some exciting things that I have coming up. So thank you all for tuning in to tonight's podcast, and I look forward to talking with you on the next one. Take care.